So please, Trude.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that introduction. And it's so nice to be invited back to TCCS 10. It's always a pleasure to come back to NTNU and SINTEF and Trondheim. And in fact, as she mentioned, I went to this university, that's where I got my education. In this very auditorium, I think I learned physics. And I even think, Nils, did we have computer science in here as well? I think all the university did, right? So for the young people in the audience, computer science in 1982 was somewhat different from what it is today. So we were sitting in the chemistry building where I had my main studies, and you would type on your terminal, and when you had done a program, you had to cross half the campus to the main building, oh, it's over there, and to have a printout, and then you could see if you were correct. And probably you weren't. So you had to go back half across the campus to reprogram, and then back and forth. So we stayed in shape back then. And technology definitely has improved over the years. So I am really pleased to be here. And I think that it is quite frustrating to work with CCS. And I should know because I've been working with this for almost 20 years. And it can be hard at times, and until a few years ago, it was really hard to watch when people struggled with how to deal with climate change and the targets. And also, I think I speak for all of us, it's really hard also to look at what they have done in the US, how they are dealing with CCS. And being a CCS expert can be really hard because we know everything. We think we have all the answers. And when people are proposing other things, it's really hard for us because we know it's not going to work. So this is like when somebody proposes something else than CCS. And it's a bit hard to cope with. But since Gassnova was here at TCCS 9 2 years ago, a lot of positive development has happened, particularly in our full-scale project. We are making good progress. We have industry on board. They are contributing really well, and we are hoping for success. And I think that many of you here in the audience have contributed to the knowledge base that put us in the position that we are in now, where we do believe that CCS is really an important part of the solution. And we also see that our way of working have influenced and made a difference in the rest of Europe and in the rest of the world. So just 2 weeks ago, in an interview with the UK, The Guardian, Chancellor Angela Merkel from Germany talked about how she thinks that we need to go net zero by 2050. And she said specifically, I'm firmly convinced that this can only be done if one is willing to capture and store CO2. And this is really very critical, really very important, because in Germany they have been opposing CCS. So this is really a breakthrough, the way I see it. And then, of course, it's good to know that Germany is looking for Norway to see what we have done here. So that's really good. Because what is happening right now in Europe, I believe, is a moment of clarity. So when I travel around Europe and in the rest of the world, I do see a difference. More and more people believe that CCS is possible and that it is necessary. And not just is it a moment of clarity, but we also see now they are acting. And that is really important. And another example is the UK. So last week, I happened to be at the CCS reception in the Parliament together with Tim and a lot of other people. And at that very moment, you know, you don't always believe that you are in the right place at the right time. But I really felt that, because all of a sudden it was on the screens that very same moment, they were proposing in the parliament to go net zero by 2050. And the same day, Theresa May visited Imperial College, and the lab she visited was a CCS pilot. And I don't believe in things happening by accident, not even Brexit, I guess. But she visited a CCS pilot. Isn't that great? On that same day. The only thing Tim told me is that they should have put a CCS sign so that everybody could watch that on BBC News. But they forgot to do that. That's how scientists have to learn better communication. Of course, they should have a sign. But we'll tell them afterwards. Another interesting thing is that the Prime Minister of UK have asked young people to give advice on how they will hit net zero. And that's also interesting. This is just happening. You heard about Greta Thunberg and all these protests against. I think we should really, really listen to young people and engage them because they have so much to contribute with. So what does this really mean, net zero? I think it actually means a lot. 80%, is it such a big difference to go to 100%? It is, yes, because going for net zero, it means that you have to apply CCS. Nobody can argue against that. That is a major shift. The other shift, of course, in UK is that they are planning to apply this by law. So it's not just another study, it's actually being law enforced if they are successful with what they are planning today. So this is really important. Let me now just give you an update on the work from Gassnova. As mentioned, we are the state enterprise for CCS in Norway. We are the main advisor to the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy. And we work with the research program Climate together with the Research Council. And we also operate the technology center at Mongstad, where we test technologies at a quite large scale. And we also track and coordinate the full-scale CCS value chain. So what we have in Norway, I think is important, is a very extensive approach to CCS. We do research, and we have supported more than 500 projects through our Climate program so far since 2005. And we have a whole pipeline of new technologies that we are supporting. And as you heard the minister say, it's more and more industrial participation also in the research program, which is key. The Technology Center at Mongstad have been in operation since 2012. It's working very well, completely filled up until 2022, which is kind of strange since we only have a contract until 2020. So we're working hard on that. And we are testing proprietary amines there, so it's post-combustion capture of CO2. We also plan to expand on that and have more technology elements in that facility. So we are doing proprietary, but also the owners, which are together with the Norwegian state through Gassnova. It's Equinor and Shell and Total. We run our own test campaigns. And why do we do that? We do that in order to share the results openly. And that's really important. This is a global challenge. We have to work together in order to solve this challenge. And then we have the full-scale project that I'll get back to in just a few seconds. What is important here is to do all of these elements at the same time. So we need to take the learnings from building this industrial scale, feed it back into research, and take it through demonstration at a fairly large scale so that we can drive down the costs of the technology to learn more and to really get this deployed at a large scale. It's important to keep up this extensive approach. You've seen this slide before, or at least a similar one. I saw, Tim, you need to have an update on yours. I'll send you that afterwards. This changes over time. So what we have currently is Fortum Oslo Varme's waste incineration plant at Trude, where we capture 400,000 tons of CO2 each year. And we also work with Norcem's cement factory in Brevik, which is a part of Heidelberg Cement, where we capture a similar amount of CO2, 400,000 tons annually. These are currently in the FEED phase, last phase before we take the investment decision. We don't know if we'll be able to get funding for none, one, or two. We will do our best to prepare everything for the government and the parliament. So they are working with the FEED phase. The same goes also for transportation and storage, where Equinor is the operator. And here we also have Total and Shell on board as partners. Why is that important? It's really important if we are to deploy this internationally. We need to have big industry players that can copy this solution elsewhere. So we want to go first in Norway, but we also need to see this happening elsewhere if we are to meet the Paris Agreement goals. We'll take the CO2 from these two emission sites and transport it by ship, store it intermediately on the west coast of Norway, build a pipeline, and then store CO2 in a formation 3,000 meters below the sea floor. So this is a very challenging project. It's big, it's costly, and we are not thinking about it as one project. We're thinking of it as infrastructure investment. So we have a surplus of quite a large capacity and can take CO2 from other countries, from other industries, and that is what we're asking for, to see enough interest. And I think that will directly influence whether we will get the funding from the Norwegian government to proceed and to build this fantastic infrastructure. Gassnova's role in this project is to coordinate and lead the overall project and make sure the public funding is well spent and that the industry is delivering. And there's a lot of interfaces here. I think what is key with what we're trying to do here in Norway is to break the chain in a way so that the industry emitters only have to deal with their own emissions. And then we'll make sure that the transportation and storage part is also making progress, and so the industry don't have to be afraid that they will not that they will capture CO2 that hasn't nowhere to go. So this is a part of a success criteria, I think, in the Norwegian approach. And then we have something called benefit realization, a bit difficult word. What it means is that we need to share the experience, we need to share the knowledge, and we need to make sure that we get more projects. It doesn't really help if Norway does one project and that's it. That's not what we're aiming for. And that's why we put so much emphasis on benefit realization. In everything we do, in everything the industry partners do, they have to share their experience, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and so forth. And we do see good examples of this now. For instance, we have given funding from Climate to Preem, a refinery producer in Sweden, and they want to use the Norwegian transportation and storage system. But then I would like to highlight another example of this. It was just launched 2 weeks ago, the 3D project at Dunkirk. So it's in France. Total is a partner, ArcelorMittal, so it's about steel, which is another industry. And we see from many of the partners here that they have also participated in the Norwegian full-scale project. So I think this is a true example of benefits realization, and we need to see more of these happening. And they, as you see from this chart, are planning to use the store in Norway. Hopefully this will develop into something that is for real. And we do see a lot of interest from other European countries. Since start of this year, we've had visitors from Sweden, from Denmark, from Germany, and we had a whole group of 14 EU ambassadors. And they want to go to the technology center at Mongstad, which is a fantastic site where you can actually see things happening. So we even had the German biggest TV station, ZDF. They came just a few weeks back, and they are making good stories about CCS. We had a 3-4 full-page article in the biggest Swedish newspaper. We even made the front page. That's good, but what's even better is that they are describing CO2 capture and storage as a complete solution. What is it going to solve? Not just the technology, but how it fits into the totality. So when we had the German TV channel coming, we sent them the article from the Swedish newspaper and say, this is how you should describe it. So to communicate this in a good way is really key. And the minister mentioned that we'll have a big EU conference in Oslo, here in Norway, just on September 5th. So we are currently organizing that and planning for that, hoping that we'll have a lot of attention also from the public on CCS. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I think it's really, I think we're really close to the realization of CCS, but we have a lot of hard work in front of us before it happens. It doesn't happen by itself. I think we have to continue to encourage and energize others to act. So I would like to invite all of you to join me in trying to make this happen with all your skills, with all your knowledge. I think that together we can turn Europe's moment of clarity into the biggest reduction in CO2 emissions in the history of mankind. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Trude. Our next speaker is Mr.
Sorry,
Stephen.
will you allow for some questions?
We have the time for one question.
Yeah, good.
So Patrick Child was lying a little bit, wasn't he? Saying the EU was doing all it could to support CCS. And the obvious way the EU could support CCS would be to extend some kind of obligation. Yeah, they've had renewables obligations. Why don't we have a sequestration obligation? Yeah. Which is essentially what I was talking about. It would be very, very easy for the EU to do this. It's been pointed out to them for 10 years how easy it would be for them to do this, and they just block their ears. So is September the 5th going to be the moment where they finally take their hands off their ears and accept the need for a sequestration obligation for Europe's fossil fuel providers?
Quite a leading question, that is. Yes, I agree with your impatience. I'm quite impatient myself, but I've learned that you have to look forward into the future. And what I see over the past few months is a big change in Europe. So Germany used to be totally against. France, not that interested. I was just in France. They seem to be getting there. We hear from, on Friday I'm going to Dublin in Ireland. I've never been to Ireland before. They want me to come and talk to a huge energy conference. So things are happening, and I think they're happening for a reason, and that we'll see a big change and commitment also from EU. I feel convinced about that. Whether it's September 5th, we'll see.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Stephen Bull.